Started. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get started. Thank you all for coming. And before he leaves, I want to thank Jeremy for setting all this stuff up. This is really great. Okay, great. Okay, so this is our faculty forum to talk about the service component of the faculty workload, and this is March 30th, 2018. And I'm saying this because this is actually being recorded. In addition to being transmitted, it's being recorded. So we want to disclose that. So you might want to perhaps temper what you're going to say. Some people, if you don't want it to be, associated with you. But I do want to say that if you, one of my plans coming from this is to sort of put together a little report that summarizes the main comments and so on. So if you have a comment that you don't want necessarily attributed to yourself by speaking it here publicly, but you still have input, please send that to me because, well, all the comments will be anonymized in any sort of report. They won't be attributed to anybody. But all right, so the reason we're having this forum is because there's, in a couple of colleges in particular, there's been a movement to reduce the service component of faculty members' workloads to 15% this year. We have heard that in at least one college there is a plan to step down service over the course of about 3 years, so that ultimately faculty will only have 5% of their workload comprising service. So, and that's caused some concern for people. There is some administrators, I'm not going to attribute comments to anybody, have said things like service has no value. And so I think that for many faculty, service does have value. But I wanted to talk about here how do we sort of quantify that value? How do we make clear to some administrators who see services as being just a place to waste money? How do we show them that it has value? How does it connect to the university mission, to the strategic goals of the universities, to individual colleges, and so on? Anybody want to start?
Well, I have a quick question because I've heard all sorts of different things from different people on campus and haven't heard an official. Which colleges are actually officially expressing this? I know my own college has. We've gotten that back, but I don't think it was the 5%.
The two that I'm aware of, okay, College of Health and the College of Engineering. But in other colleges, this hasn't apparently happened yet, or will it? I don't. Yes, Dr. Bhattacharya.
Dr. Bhattacharya always stands up when he thinks.
Please do.
In listening sessions, it was established that it emphasizes things or whatever. Okay. Now the thing is this: first of all, reducing service, how does it save money? I mean, I'm a professor of finance, and money, like Roach to a Roach motto. Money attracts things. How does it save money? Suppose you say, okay, you don't do any committee work. Okay, I don't do any committee work. I sit on my hammock and look at the stars and think about my research. So how does it save any money to anybody? It is basically trying to undercut the faculty governance. I mean, that is what is happening. First of all, those who are saying that we should cut it down to 15% or 5% or 0%, please let me have a cost sheet and show me, demonstrate to me how you save the money. Thank you.
I'm just unmuting microphones for people at a distance who have been unmuted. So I am listening, but talk amongst yourselves. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, one of my big concerns is it has always seemed to me all my life that one of the reasons for a university was not just to educate the students who were sitting in front of them, but be an education to all of society. And I'm always telling people you need to pay attention to what's going on at the university because the brightest and most wonderful people come to universities to give lectures, to share information, and the faculty there are doing wonderful things that change the community and change the life. And that that only becomes known if there's some service to the community.
Thank you. Okay. So I have unmuted everybody who's connected. So if you might still want to mute yourself though if there's any background noise. Any other comment? Anyone on the phone?
Oh yes, I'm on the phone, but I had muted myself, so I forgot to answer it.
Oh, okay, so we had a few hands in the room. So, what did anyone on the phone want to make a comment?
Not at this moment. This is Jill Flanders Crosby. Not at this moment. I want to listen for a while.
Okay. Scott, is that you?
This is Scott Downing at KPC. I just had, of course, some concerns about how this works, how it works across different colleges and campuses, and how widespread this is expected to be or will be. But I think some of the primary concerns are at a time when UAA has a number of initiatives, student success initiatives and things like that going on. How does cutting back on service work with an expanding workload, and sometimes in being involved in those initiatives? And then also, as was mentioned earlier, just how folks, particularly community campuses, are in working with the communities and the community service part of our workload, and cutting back on that would seem to undermine that support that we receive. We receive a large amount of money from our borough in support of the programs and things that we do, and I would hate to see that put in jeopardy by cutting back on community service. So there's just a couple things, I guess, at the top.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am, and then
In
Kim.
submission, the core themes of student success in public square, if we cut back on service, I think it is well taken that we cut back on governance, we cut back on faculty voice, but we also cut back, as Scott was just saying, we cut back on relationships that we build in the community that support our students and programs. And we are supposed to be inspiring our students to be engaged on a higher level than just getting their grade and getting out. This almost seems like do your work and get out. That's not what the University of Alaska is about if we look at the core themes. That's not what anybody wants the university to be, I assume. So cutting back on service impacts what we're going, it impacts partnerships that we have. Sub-departments rely very heavily on those community partnerships. Down at KPC, I'm a faculty counselor, but I also teach and coordinate human services courses for the AES degree. And if I don't have those community partnerships, then the folks that I work with to place my students in practicum may be more likely to say no. These community folks are doing it for free. They are supervising our practicum students for free. They get volunteer hours, but they get student volunteer hours. And it is time, it is work that they are giving back to the university. Part of the reason why we have good partnerships is because I put the time into them. And I can do that under a service load. If that goes away, we're endangering engagement, we're endangering public square. We're not meeting our mission as a public university, as a state of Alaska university, if we cut service.
Kim?
Well, I certainly agree with all my colleagues who have spoken already about the essential importance of service to this university. Goes without saying, and I don't believe that the deans who have proposed this are unaware of the value of service, how the fact that service keeps this university running to a large extent. But it's obvious to me anyway that there must be some other agenda at play here. I don't think the administration simply thinks that there's too much service being done. They want to cut back on it. It's probably that they want there's some vision of cost savings that can be achieved by cutting back on service, teaching more sections without hiring more faculty, something like that. So I would ask the administration to lay out clearly what your hidden agenda is regarding this proposal to cut our service, and let us as faculty, we're the experts on this, help you come up with ways that we can achieve those goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We have a few administrators here. Do any of you want to Comments? No?
I will.
Yeah.
You know me.
Denise,
I always
Robbie? Okay.
And CTC is not a college that has said that we're trying to get to a specific number, because frankly, service loads across our college today vary widely. We already have some faculty in term positions who teach more than 24 credits, and we have faculty in term positions and tenure track positions who teach fewer than 24 credits. But I'm part of the conversations, and it is in part financial, but particularly pay attention to the two colleges that you cited earlier. The College of Health is now the focus of a statewide goal to dramatically increase the number of graduates from health career-oriented degree programs, right? So you have a dean who's looking at the resources that he has. They're not giving him any new resources. And he's trying to figure out how he can meet that goal. And I believe engineering is in a similar situation. I don't know that situation quite as well, but I believe that they have increasing enrollment, lucky them, not our problem, but they have increasing enrollment and a fairly finite budget. And sir, to your point, the way that this has a financial implication is, in fact, if one is asked to teach more than the number of credits that one taught last year.
So what about quality?
It's a great question. I, as a faculty member, for all those years that I taught widely divergent numbers of credits. It's all about the individual from my perspective. What I can do in a political science class, which is my discipline, or public administration, is different from what somebody can do in biology or chemistry. So I can't answer what about quality other than to say, we obviously have to keep the quality up. Can some people accommodate more students? Yes, probably some people can effectively teach more students next year than they did this year. Some people, I would think, and I'll just stop.
Yep.
Not my problem.
So I'd like to respond.
Sure.
And I'm afraid I don't think we have been introduced.
I'm Denise Runge. I'm the Dean of CTC.
Glad to meet you. My name is Nalina Bhattacharya, one of the few long names here. And a long time. The thing is this, the question about teaching more. So first of all, we have a basic problem with enrollment, and that is governed by the demographics. Okay. So just because suppose you say, okay, you teach 3 courses, now teach 4. Okay, I teach 4. And so where are the students? And what they're doing is that they're reducing, they're canceling courses which doesn't have a certain amount of enrollment. And I've never really understood how that saves any money. Suppose you cancel all my classes, you still have to pay my salary. Okay. So I really don't know from a finance point of view if none of these things make any sense at all. And this is, I'm saying, as a finance professor. Okay.
I'm trained in economics. And it does make sense because at the decadal level, the deans have a whole budget. They don't just have one faculty member's salary. They have adjuncts, staffing. So if certain amounts of work are increased by on one person, then there can be savings because you don't have to hire more terms, adjuncts, etc. But that's the only way.
Okay, but if you let us say, suppose take finance. Okay, so suppose you say corporate finance. There shall be only one section. We'll have a huge room. One faculty will teach all of them. In investments, another faculty will teach all of investments. Or maybe you can just hire me and fire the rest because I can teach corporate finance, huge section, and this thing. Now, what will happen in the process is that first of all, I'll be teaching huge sections, which will lead to a drop in quality, no matter whatever people might wish. Okay. And secondly, after some time, I'll either demand more money if I'm the only faculty, and or I'll quit, and then good luck. Okay.
I do understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
I'm not able to speak on behalf of my colleagues, but was attempting to try to frame up what may be driving those efforts.
So
Yeah,
I'm
Andre Rosen.
Andre Rosen, I'm the Associate Dean for the College of Health, focusing on academic and student affairs. It's a complicated question, but let me give you one tiny example. We do have some programs where we literally have hundreds of students in pre-major status, and we can't accept them into the major. And it's in part to prevent developing these huge sections that we are trying to grow the number of sections that we're offering so that the class capacities can remain small and we can maintain the quality of those programs. But to your point, that's not true in all College of Health programs. There are some where adding additional sections would be an increase in cost. It would not produce any new revenue. But we do have some programs where new revenues could be generated if we had additional sections.
What is your name?
Rose Andre.
Dr. Rose.
Just call me Andre.
Yeah.
This is not a formal meeting.
Oh, okay. No, because I don't want to. I have a lot of mouth. Okay. No, I don't want to.
We should be mindful of other people, but
No.
yes, please.
Yeah, I will also.
You have the
I'm asking your permission. Okay.
Well, you should still do that. Okay.
I will stand up. Okay. You can look at my nice tie also. Okay. Now the thing is this. For a long time now, on various occasions, the last one on prioritization, I had huge public debate about what are the costing sheets. Okay. Now costing has certain principles, but I find that like costing, like strategy, all these concepts are talked about very vaguely. For example, I don't think the concept of strategy is applicable at all in an university. Okay. Okay, this comes out of game theory. I have told this to President Johnson, and of course he didn't understand the point, but that is a different issue. Now, similarly, costing. What are the costing sheets? I see comments like, this will reduce the cost. I mean, what is the evidence? What are the costing sheets? How much? Okay, I teach 3 courses. One of them is, let us say, international finance. Can anybody produce a costing sheet saying, because international finance costs this much? Can anybody produce it? So long as you don't have that system, it is futile to talk about costing. It is just doing something. I mean, it is just what I say, acting leaderly. Do something. Okay. So that we are shown to be taking some decisions, no matter what happens to it.
Actually, can I ask? I'm John Sullivan, the Dean of Harvard. Can I just? You just said that it can't be costed.
No, I didn't say that. I said that there has been no costing.
There has been no costing.
Yeah, it can be costed.
Okay, I was going to say.
Provided you have the systems and all those things. But I haven't seen any costing sheet. And without a costing sheet, suppose I'm producing this. Now I may want to discontinue this, may want to reduce production, may want to do all sorts of things. But the first starting point will be, I'll say how much does it cost? And what is the costing sheet? And so if you want to drop my course or add 500 students to my course,
well, I understand.
You need to look at the costing.
Yeah.
So
one potential way of doing this is it does not take into account the room that you're using, the electricity you're using, etc. But with regard to the amount that it costs for you to teach a 3 credit hour course would be 10% of your salary plus 10% of your benefit. Then does the amount of tuition generated meet that, or how closely does it meet? Or do you actually generate more revenue doing that than it actually costs to run that? That's the kind of analysis that we need to be doing.
I'm not too sure that whether that is an appropriate type of analysis, because that way, for example, on a back of the envelope level, I'm a business faculty, we are paid more than other faculties. I mean, I know the salaries, I have the spreadsheet, okay. So we are paid more than other faculties. So if you try to cost my class, okay, it will cost more because my salary is more. Right. Okay. Compared to that, a faculty of ours, your faculty, classes will cost less because their faculties are paid less. Okay. Now, if you want to increase the price for the business students,
which is what they did.
and I believe the money was taken by the central admin. I mean, that is the rumor.
All I know is that there is
No.
a fee that is charged based on cost of form, so yes.
Yes, but right now,
Yeah.
education has become elastic, and we can increase the price, but there may not be any buyer. Already the student aggregate student debt is right now second only to aggregate mortgage. I know the aggregate figure for the whole of America. So if that is the case, then basically students will say that, heck, I'll just work in McDonald's and hope I get a lottery someday. That's it.
That's what they do. In this state, that's what they do.
Maybe it is happening all across America.
Well, they do it in this state. That's what they do.
Well, I think people have appreciated the finer points of education finance. Thank you. Okay, any other, yes?
Okay, I guess it's my turn. So when it came to my attention earlier this week that College of Health was requesting an across-the-board reduction in service, I have never been in the various roles that I've played at other institutions of the across-the-board cuts because, and no offense to Andre, but they are the lazy man's way of doing management. And so I looked at a couple resources because I was like, well, is there actually evidence to that effect? That's a kind of an inappropriate way of doing things. And an article in Harvard Business Review calls it cost management fatigue. That's when you do cross-the-board cuts because you're too tired to actually look at what it is, what's the goal you're trying to achieve, and what do you need to do in order to achieve that goal. And Andre just mentioned that he's got a program or a couple programs that have more pre-majors and enough sections to address those students, which is a very specific goal in mind, yet doing it across the board in a whole college does not actually address that specific question. For example, Tim and I are in the College of Health, and our program has very constrained enrollment. We are currently maxed by the state at what our enrollment can be. Cutting our service does not gain, just as an example, does not gain you anything in terms of meeting that specific goal. I'm sure I know there are other programs in the college with a similar issue, as I'm sure engineering has similar issue that doing an across the board, just saying, okay, we're going to cut everybody down to 15% or 5%, as I've heard engineering is ultimately shooting for, doesn't make sense. And similar studies have been done, or published in Government Executive that, it is not doing across the board any kind of cuts, especially in the context of budget issues, it's actually counterproductive in the long run because it's not strategic. And it ends up hurting everyone, not just everyone as in people, but everything about the entity. And so, my understanding was that workloads were supposed to be a negotiated process, looking at each individual workload at some point along the way, whether it's at the dean level or the chair's level. And it seems like doing it across the board is not fulfilling that obligation of doing individual reviews of workload and being strategic in how those workloads are assigned. So now it's your turn.
Well, I was here mostly to listen, but I do have to respond to that. I think you and I, Cindy, agree almost entirely on this. And to be clear, we are not doing an across-the-board cut. That is not what we're doing.
Okay, well, that was the information that we were given.
That is not what we're doing. What we would like to see are workloads that prioritize teaching and research. On average, we would like to see a reduction in service, but that's an average. There are some people that are going to have 40% of service. We may even have some that have 60% of service. But there are also faculty who would like to have only 5% in service because they'd like to spend more time on research, or in some cases, they'd like to spend more time on teaching. So on average, across the entire college, we would like to see a reduction so that we as a college are prioritizing teaching and research. But we're not asking for every single faculty member to be at 10, 5, 15, whatever, pick a number. That's not the goal.
Okay, well, just to be clear, so that you know it, that's how it's being relayed to the faculty.
Yes.
That it is an across-the-board cut. And I believe that's how it's being pitched, or in engineering as well. Not that yeah, there's an engineering. So that's a very different message than the message that's being actually conveyed to the faculty.
And that's in your unit?
Can I make a?
Because I know that we have not. That's not been the message that we've given.
Right. I've spoken to CAS faculty that say your message was an average of 15%.
And we're also looking at moving things from service that may be more appropriately placed in teaching and or research. In large part because part of CBA identifies some things that belong in teaching that have traditionally in our college not been put there, so they belong there. We need to get that right first. Actually, I know in one case I got a synopsis of the service that was being done in a department, and because they removed stuff and put it into the teaching aspect of things, dropped it to 16.9%. Okay, so right there, our hypothesis is turning out to be true that at least a large part of what we can do is moving places, putting things in the right column.
Right, and that's
then
to some extent a little different.
Excuse me?
Yeah. There's someone online.
Then we can understand better where we are utilizing our resources. So maybe wanting to do more research, then we can move some of that. Maybe we do need to teach more classes in one area, but not in another. So we're not going to cross the board.
Okay, someone online who has a comment. Sorry. Please go ahead.
So this is Angela Trujillo. I'm a assistant professor with the School of Nursing, and we actually received an email yesterday that said we will be moving to a workload that will have a 15% service component. There's nothing in this email that says, that this will be negotiated, that this may mean that, that if you are in a project that has some factor that can do this. Like, I looked at this and said, okay, I have to change everything that I'm doing so I can make this happen. But I'm hearing you say that this is going to be a case-by-case basis. So that's, again, not being communicated the way you're saying it's intended to be communicated.
Okay. Any other comments? Anyone online want to say anything?
I have one other question or comment.
Okay, yes.
So the other thing that troubled me by this was that we're all under the same collective bargaining agreement. Yet it's not, it sounds like, and maybe this is a part of lack of inappropriate communication, that it's not being the same policies are not being utilized across all the colleges, or the same policy is not being implemented across all the colleges, even though all faculty are part of the same collective bargaining unit and under the same guidelines as to what goes in teaching, research, and service. So that was another thing that kind of troubled me about this swirl of information, was that it did not seem to be being implemented equitably across all colleges. If there is an intent to cut service down to 15 or 5 or whatever the number is.
But to go back to some of the earlier points, I'm not sure we would want to do that because the workloads are determined at the end of it between the individual faculty member and his or her chair or director. And they need to consider the needs of the units. And so in some units, you need to have a higher research allocation. In some units, you may need a higher service allocation or teaching. But to have a consistent throughout, or even within a college, I'm not sure that we would want to do that.
Right, well, I guess it came more from this idea that there were, that the statements were that they were gonna be across the board kinds
we're
of
not doing that.
changes. And that starts to call into question the idea that that it is one, what falls into different workload categories is part of collective bargaining agreement. It's not an individual basis.
Well, right, what falls into different areas is part of the CBA, but the percentage that is of effort in any given faculty member or on average for any given unit or college is not predetermined. There are 30 units is predetermined, and that's it. But beyond that, how those are allocated into the different areas are going to change. Someone that has is a teaching, teaching and research, or teaching and service, which bipartite, we call bipartite. Again, that's actually not codified anywhere either.
No, yes, that's
or
not
someone who we, termed the tripartite are obviously going to have different allocations of their workload. And it's actually getting at what has happened is getting back to your point about lazy management. Lazy management has occurred, but it started probably a long, long time ago with this idea of 3-1-1s or 4-1s or whatever combinations that we have, and the 20% needs to be allocated to this and 30% to that, on and on. And so, in a way, we kind of all of us collectively have slipped into lazy management.
Okay, a few hands, Tim, Cheryl, and then Dave.
Good question. Well, I just want to return to one points I made earlier, and where I was saying that clearly simply reducing service in itself is not the goal. As Andrea said, the goal here is to do more teaching, teach more sections of particular courses. That's better. And again, I would say that if that's the real goal, bring that to the faculty. The faculty have lots of ideas about how to teach more efficiently, team teaching, things that I'm sure I haven't even thought of. And bring us your real problems and let us help you fix them. That way, instead of antagonizing the faculty by coming up with this issue of reducing service, the faculty would be invested in the solution along with, and I think we all like to.
Cheryl?
So overall, it appears to me that the goal is to increase teaching, so there's more teaching happening. My concern in nursing is that, so I'm in the tripartite, so it's affecting me somewhat, but my teaching load is not as heavy as the bipartite faculty. So in nursing, we're running on overloads, which is also an issue. We've been told no more overloads. But we're also supposed to be expanding and taking on more students. We just don't have the faculty. So what this means for me is I'm teaching 2 more credits that I won't get overload paid for. So that's not, I like the overload pay, but it's not the same pay I get for my full-time job. It's an adjunct. But the bipartite faculty, I'm more concerned because they have a lot of credit they're teaching already. And then when you add on that, and a lot of our teaching is, in the hospital with these very long shifts. And a lot of these faculty they can go teach in a college that doesn't have service or research. And guess what? They'll be teaching 12 credits. So the whole idea of service and research is sort of this, it's in our workload, but it's kind of this, if you were in a for-profit in nursing, you basically would teach 12 credits anyway. And so I'm worried, because we're supposed to be expanding, that we have all these new energized faculty coming. And just this semester, 3 have left. 1, they came in January. 1 left after coming 1 day. She spent 1 day and left. 1 has resigned. She came in January. She's resigned. She'll stay for the end of the semester. The 3rd one has been with us for some time and has just resigned. And she's a very valuable member of our faculty. And I just think we're just pushing them too hard. These are professionals that can make, quite frankly, I gave up double CSB a couple days ago with like $2,000 in 1 day. So that's what we're competing for, and we're trying to recruit
Yeah, mine was a question, again, using the bipartite example. If it's a 4-1 for teaching one service, and if the service is 20%, if you cut that to 10, does that then mean they will be teaching 3.5 courses?
Yeah.
4.5 courses.
I mean, I don't know what your department does. I know I have a department that does teach 4 and 6 credit hour courses, so it would be, we would have to look at something.
Right, if they're all 3 credit, then what do you do with it?
That is exactly why it has to be negotiated with individual faculty, because, automotive and diesel credits can vary from 1 to 5 or more credits depending on the class. It just doesn't make sense to think in terms of 4-1 or 3 or whatever, because it's going to vary so widely from department to department. Yeah, in political science, they would all probably be 3 credit classes. Then we have a different conversation.
But also that assumes that everybody gets cut 15% across the board, or 10%, or what everybody gets cut the same thing. You have to look also what service is being done by somebody. It might be that you have to shift some services from one individual and provide service as an individual. I mean, there are all sorts of ways of handling this. But if you say yes across the board, then you run into your problem. But if you look at it as any department as a team of people doing a variety of pieces of work. By the way, I lost the conference.
I just thought that was a deep look.
Where'd the money go? So, when you fall into trying to do something across the board, then you create some of those issues. But the other assumption, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to address it, is that in some cases, at least, I can't speak for Dean Barlow, but he did tell us that one of the things that the College of Engineering needs to do is to have more of their workload dedicated to research and to doing more extramurally funded research. In order to be a competitive engineering school, that's an important thing. And when Cindy brought up the fact that you guys really, you're limited in the number of students you can teach, so therefore either the number of student credit hours you generate or the number of sections you need, et cetera. Well, perhaps, and I don't know what your director's idea of what needs to be done, but I would imagine that increasing research. The university could definitely use more time spent on research, particularly in a med school setting where you want to attract external funding to help translational research and that sort of thing. So I can't speak for directors or other deans, but I think that assuming that any kind of decrease, 2 assumptions that I've implicitly heard here is that any decrease in service will be dedicated directly to teaching. That's not necessarily the case. Or classroom, increase in the number of courses taught or something like that. And the other implicit one was that it would be added on to. That's also lazy management. Instead of looking at and saying, we're just going to add on to, we need to assess what service is being done and how well that ties to the mission of the university, the mission of, and actually she left, but she pointed out some of the issues with regard to mission, the mission of the university. How closely is service tied to the mission of your department, of your university, et cetera? And so all these things need to be considered. It is not an easy task. It is not. It's not like falling off a log, unless you want to be lazy management. So.
Yeah, just to clarify,
yeah.
John, it was not Jane saying this. She was conveying what she expressed this to be, that she was conveying the message from the deans of the college, that it would be a 15% across the board. It's not her.
Yeah, I actually know that Jeff said no, that's not the case. So.
Yeah, but it just to make sure that.
Well,
my understanding is it was not her
Okay. Okay. Yep.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Olson, professor of general assisting in allied health. So I'm in College of Health and experience in this. And I've been teaching at the university for just a little over 20 years now, so I do have a lot of experience. And from my perspective, is that we have a lot of term faculty in allied health, and I don't know about other areas in the College of Health. We have a lot of term faculty. And it's been recently brought to my attention that some newer faculty we have been on board less than 5 years or so, when they go through the new intake process where they go through all the higher ups explaining what they should do, and they've been told, don't worry about service. They still have that 6 credits that's supposed to be devoted to service, but no one's guiding them on what they should be doing. So I think we do have a service problem, but I'm not sure it's what administration thinks the service problem is. I mean, I'm a bipartite faculty, and I do a lot of teaching, and I'm also around my program. We need to hang on to the service component. I can see why it's being diminished in value, especially with our term faculty. A lot of them getting those 6 credits, but not really producing a lot of service for it. But we just need to guide them along. I think it's very dangerous to start reducing the service component, perhaps one by one. But I've never done more negotiating for my workload. I believe it's been returned to me 3 or 4 times. So I don't even know if it'll be approved by Andre. I'm skeptical at this point. But I drug out about, of my 20 years teaching, I've drug out about 6 workloads that I've had over the past 20 years, just so I could give my immediate director like a snapshot in time of workloads. And I've never worked more than I am currently working, ever. And I can't imagine working more hours than I am right now. But I think there's other people, perhaps, who are right to step into some of these service components, but we haven't nurtured them along. We haven't given them the tools to know what they should be doing to make this university even better than it already is. So that's all. I just wanted to kind of speak to that component because I'm not sure how many of you guys work with term faculty.
Does anyone online have anything they want to say?
I did want to mention that the discussion of flexibility I think is important. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure how widespread this is. I think if the folks who are implementing this support the idea is that this is a unit, often a unit discussion in terms of how this looks, and even an individual workload discussion obviously is good. So that flexibility and because our campus, we haven't even had heard of this. Our director hadn't, and so beginning to talk about that, and if individuals certainly want to do a little more service or a little less service, I've never known exactly what 20% means, to be honest, or 15%, but that's where the individual discussion with the directors or the deans, I think, or department heads comes in. So I appreciate that discussion of flexibility.
And Scott, we apologize for Gary for not bringing him or the directors into the loop. We should have done that. We didn't, especially before we talked with the executive committee. So you wouldn't have tapped him on the shoulder in the lunch line and gone, so what do you know about this? So.
Okay. Cindy?
At negotiations, we worked very, very hard to ensure that all faculty are valued. And one of the topics that I keep hearing from all of us is the reference to term in the way that it is said. If we can all try to think that faculty members who are not in a tenure track appointment are just non-tenure track faculty members. Their value is not limited. And if all of us can at least start there and say, welcome to our university, you are important to our university because every faculty matters, it will start all of it being a different discussion than instantly. If someone's online right now, what they heard 9 times so far is term. they're very valuable to our system. And we need to start with simple things like that and then address these broader issues too.
Okay. Any other comments?
No.
Yeah, Kelly, and then
So,
Sharon.
Kelly Smith, I'm automotive release and technology at CTC, and I came to listen. I didn't really have anything to go forward from it. But as I listen, the common theme that I'm hearing is communication. There's a lot of people, one group of people that heard this or think that or the other thing. The scariest thing that I heard was the term secret agenda. Every leadership course I ever took kind of drove home to me that get as much information out as you can, as soon as you can. Something that I appreciate in our college is that there's been, some of this has been going on for a while. There's been a move ongoing to try to be consistent in how we quantify our service, and we also need to make sure it's quality. Anybody that thinks that we're in a static environment doesn't do anything, not just in the university, but across the state. So, I would just encourage more of this information sharing, and certainly getting out what it is that we're trying to do to make people as perfect as possible. Hopefully we can solve some of these problems that I'm sure they won't all be solved, but I think those are okay.
Thank you. Good comment. Sure.
My comment's kind of related. I think having the information ahead of time will also help faculty be less reactive. Like some other changes that have happened at the same time, so now there'll be more teaching credit. They said how it's worked on my workload. But at the same time, the credits I got for one course I taught was online. I used to have 2 sections. So currently I have a section of 32 that I'll get 4 credits instead of 6, which that's going to happen, at least right now. But it used to be capped at 15 when I developed the course, and then it was capped at 20. And my understanding is now 25, and it's going to be 35. So, but if I have this information, I just found out, now I'm going to take the course and redesign it for a large, so I'm going through tech fellows, hopefully I'll get accepted, but had I known that previously, I could have been working on that. So the summer will kind of be a bit of a distress with all these students. If I really stick to the credits I've been assigned, I probably won't, I'll just do what I normally do. But I think having what's the big picture and the information, because I think it is, what I'm seeing is more credit. And I totally get how you're going to save money in nursing, because we get a lot of overload. But I also see where we're suffering in other areas where we have tripartite faculty that are really struggling because their research is suffering because they're teaching. And they're teaching for pennies. So per hour, when you can take on an overload, I try to tell them this is not worth it. Go work part-time in the hospital, do your job here, and split it up. Make your money here, teach here. And so that's the advice I give to faculty. But a lot of them don't. They just sign up for as much overload as possible and just keep, and they think that's going to pay off when they go up for promotion, and it doesn't. It hurts them. And so.
Otto, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Are the workloads public? Because I also have a concern about equity. I mean, suppose you dump all the teaching to one faculty and all the service to another faculty. Okay. So basically the person who is doing the service is getting a lot of research time. I'm assuming he or she is a tripartite. And so are the workloads public? Will this be done in an equitable manner? Or will some people be teaching more and other people be teaching less? I know instances, I mean, it's not that I'm talking hypothetically. I exactly know instances where this is happening, some of them, not all of them. But there is also a question of equity, and I also don't understand. I did some little calculation, and I think this has to, Dave also raised the same point. So right now, let us say a standard workload is 18 30 workload units. Out of this 30 workload units, the actually measurable one, the one objectively measurable is only teaching workloads, because 3 credit is 3 workload. Okay. So now if you take 20% off the service, and there's no measurement here, that this committee is worth this many, nobody measures that. It's just approximation. So from 20%, if you reduce it to 15%, it results in a 1.5 workload units, which means what? Another 1.5 credit course? I mean, suppose you reduce me to that, where will you find the 1.5 credit course for me to teach? Okay. So I really don't understand how this is going to save any money. Okay. I'm not really understanding.
Can I give you the math for that? Is that you say 20%, and we reduce one of your colleagues to 10%, and put that 3 credit hours into their research, and guess what? You've got 15% on average service.
Yes, but the person who gets the research, also gets a better CV and a better chance at the job market.
Well,
I'll immediately prefer to do all research and no teaching.
Then I will put him to save him from out competing you. I will put him into a course.
So this can only be ensured if all the workloads are covered.
Really good teacher.
If this can only be ensured, equity can only be ensured if the workloads are covered, because then there is an automatic check.
Aren't they covered?
I don't know.
No. Could they be? I don't know.
I don't know. Can I request, like salary data, can I request about the workload of all the time? Can I request? I don't know.
Well, I don't know.
If people wanted to go through every workload and look at the workloads that have been turned in at the university, there are genuine times that we would have the most fun in our life laughing, because it is unbelievable how diverse, how pitifully poor they have been completed. There is no shortage of faculty giving 100%. The 30 workload units reflect the whole of an individual, and no 2 faculty members' workloads are identical. There are faculty members who think I'm in class 3 times and somebody else is in class 2. But that same faculty under teaching, if they put the teaching work that's under teaching under number 2 under the workload, they're the advising, they're the person out in the high schools, they're all of this, and that also counts as teaching credit. So there's no way to really take the workload that is being submitted by faculty and check and balance it, because it doesn't check and balance.
If I feel that I'm being working more, is there a way for me to request the workload of everybody in School of Business and compare it, if I want to do that? That is the question. Information. This is a straight question.
Yes, you can fill out a for information only request and go through the process.
Where is this process available? I've been asking this question, nobody told me where I can find it.
A FOIA request, and I don't know what all falls in that bottom.
All FOIA.
FOIA.
Freedom of information.
Freedom of
information.
Okay.
Well, but I have a broader question. Why is equity in workloads so important? I mean, it's a broad question. I mean, I think it, first, I'm speaking myself, not as the president of the Faculty Senate here, but I think flexibility is what we should be aiming for. Because there may be some people who are really awesome at teaching, but their research is like, and they don't really like committee work. And have that person teach more. You may have people whose teaching is really, they don't excite students, but their research is awesome. And those people should be doing more research. But I do think there is a problem of managerial laziness that's crept in, and so for the 14, 15 years I've been here, it was always like you're teaching 3 courses and then you're doing 20% research, 20% service. That was just how it was, and so more flexibility, good. An edict across the board cut, not so good. Even though there's disagreement on the extent to which that is in reality or whether it's been communicated adequately with. Yeah. Yes, Libby?
I wanted to toss in, I'm sure people know the difference between equality and equity. So we're aiming for things that are fair, not things that are the same.
Yes.
And I'll just say that because Cafe has heard a number of folks highlighting the concern about the portion of service carried by women. So the equitable issue is important, not so much the equality.
Well, that's a really good point, and that has actually been studied in other places that women tend to do more service, they do produce less research. This affects their career trajectories in a pretty significant way. That's a really good point. Jenny?
So on that note, I did want to just speak to one thing. My colleague just made an offhand comment that the faculty member who has a service workload has more time to spend on their research. And it's kind of comments like this. One thing that I'm a little bit afraid of that creeps into this conversation is this idea that that service a priori has less value. I am a very high service faculty member because I'm really, really good at it. I'm 40% this year. And I assure you that, and I assure the administrators in the room that a very different conversation is happening in engineering right now. How you are characterizing this discussion. But I've been told that faculty service does not have value and doesn't produce anything useful, and that doesn't actually describe any of the service that I'm doing this year. Our accreditation is partly the result of a lot of service. Outreach is the result of a lot of service. There's a lot of faculty that sit on boards of nonprofits. Our Carnegie Foundation designation as a community engaged campus is the result of a lot of service, among other things. And I think there's a discussion to be had. I don't necessarily think that the 20% should be untouchable. And I don't think that every committee on this campus is untouchable either. We can have those conversations about which service is aligned with our goals and which is not. But for the UAA 2020 initiatives that we're supposedly getting behind right now, those are going to require a lot of service for faculty, staff, and administration for planning and implementation. And there's a lot of very aligned service that goes on this campus. And I'd like us to remain cognizant of that when we have this discussion.
Okay. Anyone online with a comment?
This is Jill Flanders Crosby. I'm still listening patiently and taking it all in.
Okay, but you don't have a comment?
I'm still not complete. I guess my biggest comment would be in this negotiation of, because service is so multi-ranging. It's from departmental service to university service to community service to professional service, and I'm just sort of, I can almost envision, let's say someone says, well, your service, we believe should be cut down, but the service we want you to do is going to be to, peer review or to this, when that faculty member may feel that they've lost out on a different level of service that they felt really valuable. And so I'm just wondering what are these negotiations how are they going to be shaped? How are they going to be envisioned? And what kind of top-down insistence for the type of service that the faculty has to wind up doing might or might not be enacted? Hello?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not hearing any answers, so I'm like, did I get lost?
I think John's thinking.
Well, I mean, that is such a broad, wide open question that it's kind of hard to respond to, because the best answer to that one is it depends. But when Dean Jesse and I went and talked with the executive committee, a sort of similar question in a way got brought up. It was couched differently, but it was essentially the same kind of question as, in a way, who gets to decide what is important service and what isn't. And I think that actually is something that needs to be decided by a shared process. But also ultimately, the dean is responsible for making the decision with what gets taught. Also, perhaps what of the list of things that have been put forth as valuable service is what that, whether or not you may want to do something that's not in the valuable category, but we may need you to do something in the valuable category. So I do believe that the dean has that responsibility to go where, but I'm not saying the dean says what is needed. I think that is a shared thing that we need to arrive at. But once we arrive at that, the dean is responsible for saying, well, we need you to teach this, or we need you to do service here. We won't. I mean, we do that with our curriculum. The faculty and eventually administration weighs in on what a curriculum should look like, and then it is the responsibility of the dean to say, well, you'd really like to teach that course, but we need you to teach this. And it's not always a comfortable conversation, but that's what I've been charged with being responsible for.
Well, I understand my question was very broad, but I think that's exactly the kind of questions that a lot of faculty are going to be raising. And I think the other thing that might be raised is what one person may deem not valuable service in essence could truly be. And then I guess it's up to the responsibility of the faculty member to pitch their case for why it's important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But sometimes there's not a good understanding across various disciplines inside of singular colleges, especially one like ours where there's so much diversity as to understanding what that value is. But that also then takes me back to a comment I've heard over and over: faculty involvement, buy the faculty in, keep us informed, involve us, have conversations with us, and not just with the chairs, but have larger conversations that involve, especially faculty who have been here for a very, very, very long time, and even the new faculty members who are very deeply invested inside of their disciplines and their classes and the kinds of services they are doing when they really understand that value and that importance. I do a significant amount of service, probably way more than my 20%, simply because I'm one of those few fine arts people that now has the time to be invested in service, because I'm not working on creation so much, because I'm one of the only voices for university policy that understands the role of the fine arts in the university. And those are also important facets that we as faculty have that I think need to be remembered as we're thinking about the various layers of service. We are also one of those work engines with university policy. A lot falls on our shoulders to make sure that this kind of work is taken care of and thought about in a thoughtful way. So that's my last comment. So.
And Jill, I don't disagree with you. In fact, that's what my point is, that it has to have faculty input. And I agree with you because of the diversity, particularly in our college. I can't speak for the diversity in other colleges, but with regard to the various disciplines. But yeah, absolutely. And so what may be of value in the fine arts, fine and performing arts, may not be of value in the social sciences, but what's of value in the social sciences might not be of value. So I would suggest within our divisions would be a place for us to start.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Catherine Slagle. I'm a faculty member with Stephanie over at Allied Health. And the only thing I do want to comment on is that as far as the communication and the faculty involvement, I do want to kind of throw a little support to our higher administration in this process as far as the School of Allied Health is concerned, because our director did set up a meeting with our union rep, and Andre came over, and basically what Andre said earlier is exactly what he said to us as a unit. So there is communication going on out there and opportunities for faculty to have these engagements. It's just, if you're not getting that in your own division, it may be something you need to go back and ask for if you want smaller, to know what exactly going to go on. If you get these emails that say 15% across the board, that is not what Andre and Jeff said at the meeting with our division. You said exactly what you said earlier. So just, that's kind of what I want to say, that there is that communication going on, maybe not as wide as it needs to be, but there is some of that going on out there.
Well, I have a question. So we've talked about the role of service with respect to the mission and meeting objectives of the units and so on. But I want to ask the faculty here in particular, how does service contribute to your professional development? Because that's another thing faculty have to think about. It's not just, meeting what the management wants. It's also, we have an obligation to continue our professional development. So yeah.
And that is actually one of the things that I'm worried about. Again, the discussion that's shaping up in engineering is being couched quite differently, but especially in the area of professional service, a lot of us are reviewers for journals, executive editors for journals. That's not only a really essential way for us to get our names out there, but it also reflects well on the university. I am a volunteer reviewer with ABET. I go out on ABET visits every year. That's the networking opportunities within engineering with my ABET work have been, pretty astounding. If I were asked to cut my ABET activities, that would be an interesting day. If I were asked to, if some of my very research-heavy colleagues were asked to cut we're told that the journal review is not something that we can afford. We need you in the classroom more. That's going to be an interesting day. Because, and I understand that the CPA actually says that the power of the deans to set workloads is not absolute. It does have edges. We do have a responsibility to, mentor our untenured colleagues toward being able to achieve tenure, and we need to, and hopefully we're mentoring our non-full professor colleagues so that one day, I would like to get promoted one day. So I would say that service can have especially professional service and community service for some disciplines, would have a really profound effect on our career development.
Anybody else want to talk about what service means to you as an individual?
Well, in a small, a small department where there's only one leadership role in that department, and it's a permanent director, so the chances of circulating through as a rotating chair or anything does not exist. Service has given me the opportunity to develop leadership skills and to be in a position of leadership on certain aspects for the university and for the state. And without that without that service component, I wouldn't have those opportunities.
Dave?
Yeah, how do you quantify and qualify the value of any given service that you're doing? Who's going to do that? We didn't know any people in their classes. Some classes are a lot easier to teach than other classes. We're doing the same thing with service. And a lot of the benefits are intangible in the service that you do. I do a lot of stuff with the community that maybe you don't directly see it here. The one group with almost all of our internships come with that organization. I work with the ASD. Is there a direct benefit? No, but are we improving the relations and trying to establish this all the way through kind of an education thing? Yes. So, where's this going to come from?
Hi, Sharon. This is Thea in Kodiak.
Hi, Thea.
What service means to me in a small community where the department's very small, there's me, it means I have a chance to do work in my community that needs to be done by people in my field. I get to volunteer my services in to facilitate public meetings so that the community doesn't have community organizations don't have to hire someone. I'm trained to do it. It means I can affect social change in my community because I have the time to be able to do it. I don't have to leave my, take leave from my job to go do it. And it also means I get to be involved in some what I think are important university committees. Like all of the assessment stuff. I like it. So that might be a different idea of service. It's not to benefit me, it's to benefit others. I'm done.
Yep, thank you. That was a good comment. And that resonates with me because I do a lot of community work also for similar reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah, I know. Keep going.
To me, service is about faculty governance. And without faculty governance, any university is doomed. Because we are knowledge workers, and actually, whatever I'm teaching or doing research, I'm not really sitting in my bedroom and doing this, without reference to anything else. We are all doing it collectively. And in order to do it properly, we need to meet, talk, set up policies, and any university which short-circuits this process is going to be destroyed in the end. That is the outcome. And as far as professional service is concerned, when I be a discussant in a conference, when I review papers, I am actually doing service for my community of finance academics, and others will be knowing me and looking at me, and this also enhances some of my mobility in the job market, okay, which is one way to keep a autocratic leadership in check, okay, because at the end of it, our only hope is that, okay, I quit, okay, and in order to say I quit, I got to have a CV which can be presented in the job market. Thanks.
So I've heard that some colleges have figured out a way to systematically quantify how many workload units or portions thereof service on particular committees is worth. Is there anyone in a college like that who can comment on that?
We simply counted the number of hours you spent in that service. There's no quantity, or no quality, it was called quantity only.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was implemented or not, but I know Frank Jeffries actually presented something that looked at the different types of committees that business faculty participated in, and then did assign some value. A credit hours is a value, it's a resource, right? So, and this was my understanding was not done by Frank alone, but actually by a shared process. So
and that all faculty participated in, and I think the highest number
I don't know.
from the assessment curriculum.
So it's my college. Kelly mentioned it earlier. What we did last spring, we had a college-wide faculty meeting, invited the faculty, and I asked them, would you be interested in attempting to quantify? And I gave a few examples of the kinds of things Cynthia was mentioning earlier. Wonky things like 3 different people all serving on the same committee, PICR, our curriculum, program improvement, curriculum review committee, and one person, PICR was all of their 20% of service. For another person, they did that plus 5 other committees. I'm not taking big committees, Faculty Senate committees, including UAB, and it was also 3. And I was like, are you interested in examining this? So, as an experiment, we looked at the credit hour as the basis, the Carnegie unit, and we allocated, okay, if you spend this much time in prep for the committee and this much time in the meeting, how much is that going to work out to? And we did it last year, really this year, right? And just recently, we held another meeting, and I asked folks, are you interested in continuing the experiment? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. Kelly can say a whole lot more than I can, because there's been refinement. People have sent information and said, we underestimated this, we overestimated that. It's important to note that it is not being mandated. It is an option that faculty may use to express their service on their workloads.
Regarding the Frank Jeffries report, and I wish we give this. When he presented that report, I went eyeball to eyeball, jaw to jaw, toe to toe with him, because I think it is a very bad report, and I think the estimates were done very, very offhand manner. We asked him. I asked him in a public meeting, how did you make those estimates? He just asked some of the committee chairs, how much do you think people spend? I mean, no survey, nothing, no methodology. And he did that, and I also, we are not hourly workers. If you want us to punch card, please introduce that punch card system. And if you are going to penny pinch and say, okay, how many hours you work on this? With knowledge workers, this is going to fail, because I say that I've been thinking about this paper for 6 hours at a stretch. And there's no way you can prove me wrong, because this is hidden action. You cannot observe my action, so you cannot really prove me wrong. So the point is that I think basically service is about governance, and we should have more transparency. I'll certainly say that make all the workloads public. Let there be a file in the dean's office where I can go and check everybody's workload, and that will straighten up the system automatically. That is the way. Thank you.
Yes, when people are describing it in this sort of philosophical sense, it's pleasant. You'll weigh this and you'll weigh this. But then when it actually hits a real workload, and I have this, I'd love to just put my workload up, because my service was just reduced. And it was suggested that maybe I should stop doing the board of nursing. And I was like, so that I could do a department level committee. And it's just, these conversations are so absurd to me that clearly it's not value. The list of my service, nursing is notorious for the service. They have everybody in the department has too much service. So when they say cutting service, that doesn't mean cutting service. It means increasing teaching in my reality. And in nursing is notoriously weak, probably in research, to be honest. So it's not going to mean more research either, but it might mean more teaching. And those, we have some new faculty really trying to get, Shelley's here. I don't know how many grants you've applied for in the last 3 weeks alone. So somebody like her, and I'm sorry to make it personal, but if you're increasing her teaching, her service really isn't changing. How is she going to, be competitive and have time to really put into those grants? So philosophically, it does all sound lovely, but I wish they would come down to the
I guess my
level.
question would be, why wouldn't her service be decreased if you asked her to teach another extra credit?
That's not what's happening. And this isn't a I've seen my workload for the fall. I just started this morning. So
and I'd like to make a comment too.
Or
I'm trying part-time.
So you're trying to track. So you proposed a workload, okay, and then you went to the director.
I think there's I don't want to get down on the director. There's a challenge. Our director has to increase a program without any faculty. We have students, and without any clinical sites, and with all these, and I get what's happening, but when you put it down though in that individual level, like for me, I was over 2 credits for teaching, say. So normally that would be like an overload. I try not to do overloads. I don't want them, they're not worth it to me. So when they looked at my workload, they said, well, where do you cut 2 credits? I said, well, a clinical is 2 credits, you cut clinical. But the hospital insists that I'm the one that does that clinical. They can't cut that clinical. Because of some of my service and my relationship with hospitals, they want me doing that clinical. And I'm the only one that can do a double clinical. And I've actually granted, anyway, it's getting too personal, but so I know my value. But the service is actually suggesting to increase. Because I'm being tasked to do something additional to what's already there, and it's reduced. I think it's just, I don't know, maybe that's not true. I know that there's
Simple answer, some of those are for emergency and temporary purposes only. We're trying to stick to that policy. And it's really for the benefit of the faculty members too.
I totally agree with that.
As we talked about before, when we overload them, that means it makes it that much more difficult to achieve promotion and tenure.
Yeah. We actually have someone who's been trying to say something online.
Yes, hi, this is Angela Trujillo. You know, I echo quite a bit of what Cheryl and Thea are saying. You know, my youth of service is really to focus on the community and what can I be doing to promote social change in the community and use my expertise to kind of help formulate that. But that also comes back and speaks to the work that I do in my capstone courses. And so, because that requires that I am interacting with the community, and it's that relationship that increases their willingness to work with our students, because again, they're using their work time and their energies and their monies in some cases to provide our students with opportunities to do, you know, population health assessment and interventions. And so, you know, and those are individual pieces, not to mention what so many of my colleagues are doing, like in the hospitals. And I don't see decreasing the workload as changing the time that I'm going to be doing that. I see this making I'm no longer going to be working my 40, 42 hours a week. I'm going to be working 44 or 45 hours a week to ensure that I'm able to complete what I need to do or what I feel I need to do to maintain the quality of the work that I'm doing.
So I have a follow-up, a question sort of based on what you said. What is the obligation of the university to the community?
Well, my perception is that the obligation is 100%. Like, we should be providing not only education for individuals to then come back and serve the community, but if we're not abreast of what's happening in the community, we can't best serve current events and education to make sure that the students we're turning out are aware of what's happening and can actually apply what they're learning to real world opportunities.
So, I mean, should faculty, not necessarily to you, but a general question to everybody, faculty be expected reasonably by the community to essentially do free work for community groups, or should we be expected to serve on committees and boards of directors and yada yada and so on?
So Jeff really wanted to be here, Jeff Jesse, the Dean for the College of Health, but unfortunately it was flying out today, so couldn't be here. So I'm going to try to channel him and respond to this question. One of the things that I think we do need to be careful about are boards, commissions, committees, where we are the only people who are paid by our employers to serve on those boards and committees. I don't know that I have an answer to your question, Sharon, but it is something that we have to pay attention to. When we serve on a board, and there are people who work for the state, people who work for tribal corporations, people work from all over the state or the municipality, but we are the only person there that's actually getting paid to do that service. It's a unique situation, and I'm not sure how to address that.
But okay, well, how do you know the other members aren't being paid? I suppose they're salaried workers.
In some cases they are, but in some cases they're not. I have less concerns with the ones where everybody is getting paid by their employers to serve. So in the criminal justice area, I can think of the Criminal Justice Commission. Every member there is paid by the Department of Law, by police agencies. They're all as part of their workload.
Right.
But when I then go, my classic example, animal shelter, nobody's getting paid by their employer to serve for the Humane Society. Right? So that's a very different type of service. Well, and even though I'm preventing animal abuse and it is related to the work that I do, it's different.
So, what is the role of faculty's professional expertise, though? So, should we be using our professional expertise to help, say, groups of people in the community who are volunteers? Or should we just say none of you are paid to be here, so therefore I myself must be a volunteer, and I don't have enough time, so sorry, until you all start getting paid by your employers, I can't help you?
Well, you can. It's just the question is, should the university pay for that? Or should you do that as a volunteer like everybody else on that application? It's a question. I don't have an answer.
I feel a little differently, but not dramatically differently, but, and I always use the basket weaving example. If I'm a basket weaving faculty member, then I probably should not be showing on my workload, which is reflecting where I'm compensated by the university, my service on that animal shelter board, right? I can report it on my annual activity report to show that I'm involved in the community and all of that, but the workload agreement is a compensatory type of document, right? So because it doesn't connect to my expertise, I think that that's not appropriate. However, since I am a public policy person, if I were a faculty member and I were on a public policy related board, then I think that this is just my personal opinion, that would be something that would maybe make sense. That maybe the state's tax dollars that are invested in the institution are being put to good use by my service on a board for which I do have professional expertise. Like, that's the difference to me. I don't know. That's as a person, not as a duty.
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry.
I want to present my scenario and see what you guys think. So just for the people who don't know, I'm an accounting professor, and one of my areas of expertise is governmental and not-for-profit accounting. So I am the treasurer on 2 different not-for-profit boards that are basically benefiting from my financial expertise. And in particular, one of them, I do their 990. It was previously paid for with outside CPAs, and we had a cash crunch, and I said, I can do that for you. And trust me when I say this, it is a pain in the ass for me. I don't know if anybody here has ever done the 990, but it's way worse than the personal income tax. Is that something that I should put on my workload agreement and showing that I am doing something that's in my area of expertise? And I think, that the university is benefiting from the fact that I'm using my expertise on something like that. But part of what I hear from you guys is, if it's not part of the university, it doesn't really count. And I kind of wonder about that.
I can't answer for your name, obviously, but again, to me, if you're applying your professional expertise as opposed to just the things that you love and care about. I love and care about animals, but I have no expertise to bring to the table, nothing other than heart, right? So if you're applying your expertise, then in general, yeah, I would be willing to give workload credit for that because it is something serving the broader community, which is one of the areas that you're going to be evaluated on when you go through promotion, tenure, et cetera. But
okay. So Jenny and then Cheryl.
Just to echo what Denise said, I know that you mean it this way, but the semantic issue of calling faculty service free work, there are certainly when we are applying in those times when we are applying our professional expertise, there are benefits to the university and to our departments. I've got colleagues who work with the Lego League Robotics student groups, getting kids interested in STEM. I would argue that that's, one of our goals is to increase our profile and our prestige in the community. So I would argue that for STEM faculty, that that activity does just that. And to kind of turn it on its head a little with my ABET work, I talked about ABET a lot. ABET evaluators are about 2/3 university types and about 1/3 come from industry because, ABET was originally formed of all of the professional societies for engineering. It's a peer review and other accreditation. And every time I go out on a visit, I hear from my industry colleagues that they have trouble with their bosses not valuing the work that they do. And I fear the day when ABET becomes and I don't think this will really happen, but ABET needs to not be just an academic function. We do need that in industry, and I think that's a shame that the industry colleagues, bosses don't find the ABET work valuable. Whereas the university folks are essentially getting compensated to do the ABET work with much fewer questions asked. But it's not free work if we're using our professional expertise.
Yeah, no, and let me clarify what I meant by free work. I meant so for example, Soren's example, he's providing, the organization is getting the benefit of his professional expertise for free. That's what that it's free for the organization, right?
And I guess I would say, to answer that question, I think, yes, the university does have a responsibility to the community. I do believe that.
I'm going to take a slightly different, and just because I love playing devil's advocate, legislator, looking at this and saying, okay, so the university gets most of its funding from either from the general fund or from tuition. So Oren, we're doing this work for a not-for-profit entity, and I don't know what it is, but it's not necessarily, if it were maybe not-for-profit in a way, for forensic accounting, maybe that would be something you could make the link back to, but if it's for the Humane Society, now the state is paying part of the bill for the Humane Society, wait a minute, Jimmy, and you were asking the students to pay for what the Humane Society had maybe normally paid a certified public account for. So I think we have to say, is this, I don't know, and part of it is to play devil's advocate to make us think about this. I don't have an easy answer to that. ABET, I think we can tie directly to the quality of our educational system, and yes, we are responsible to the public to provide quality education, and ABET helps us to do that. So, or to serve on a journal, say that an editor of a journal that definitely has impact on research, which is part of our job. More detail. The answer is thumbs up, thumbs down, or we're in the shady area.
Well, so that gets back to my very original comment that having the dean read the workloads and actually analyze them is what is needed. It's not across the board, except for whatever,
Yeah.
And whether you guys do that or not, I
We're trying to the best of our ability.
I would help that.
Because the hard part is the answer to your question in part depends on the other workloads they do. Because we have to look at the unit level. Are we able to accomplish the business of the university? And so I can think of journal editors. We just approved one recently. The problem is if every faculty member in that department wants to serve as a journal editor, we're going to have a serious problem. But to have 2 or 3 do that, that's great. We fully support that.
Not everybody has to do everything.
Few hands. Cheryl, Jenny.
Somebody's got to teach.
Cheryl,
I think it goes back to sort of I kind of think of it, I know not everyone thinks this way, that the service is all free. That really, I went somewhere that didn't have service and research. I'd still be nice to get back to that. So yeah, Andre and I've talked about this before, but I'm always like, so what part are they paying, or am I being paid for? Because so for the board of nursing, other people on the board actually are paid. I'm actually the RN member. I don't take a shift from the hospital and have them pay me there because I have a salary, so I'm not going to do that. But the other nurses on the board, many of the hospitals are paying that. But if you look at the actual, so my workload for the service, I could take the board of nursing off, I still have enough service. I could take my boards off, I still have enough service because I'm on multiple committees here at the university too. So it's not really about arguing the amount for the time. If that's not listed in my service, I can't count it toward my promotion and tenure. So you should be putting more things on. But to pretend that it actually equates, if I look at the board of nursing alone, it's a 3-day meeting 4 times a year. That's 12 hours. That's just the meetings. It takes a day or 2 for me to prep for the meeting. Also associated with that, I have a 2-day meeting 3 times a year in Chicago. So that's 6 days. And then investigators are on the phone with me at least once a week. And if it's a big case, I might be in the office for 8 hours. So my service is like, so then I'm going to like, what piece of that cake is like you're getting paid for that? Like, I feel like I'm a nurse always, and I don't, as a professional, I don't breaking this down. I stopped punching that clock. I punch the clock at the hospital, and I make sure I get every dime that they tell me to get paid by the hour. But here, it's like I'm me 24/7. So when I'm on that red eye, that guy next to me is like, hey, dude, you have some guy you need to go get checked. I'm a nurse. I'm providing service on my red eye. Like you just don't turn that off. So when they try to take something like sort of scholar and break it into these little parts, it just sounds good in the conversation, but when you actually get into the actual details, it really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Jenny? Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Because I have not heard anybody say that before. Is it generally accepted that if something is not written on the workload agreement, it cannot be considered for tenure and promotion? I thought that the portfolio is what is evaluated for tenure and promotion. Workload agreements are included in the portfolio. I just want,
You are
because
judged against what's on your workload. That is what the contracts. So
But you can certainly do above and beyond that.
We can only hold you responsible for what's on the work.
Right. Exactly how it's going to be looked at from a very fine perspective of the reviewer.
Yeah.
So how much is looked at? What is it?
Well, but I also would ask, if being serving on the board specified as something you must do in your FEPPs in order to get tenure in the faculty evaluation? That's our internal document about each one of the departments should have one.
Well,
Is that specified? So if it's not
well,
specified.
you need, state level, national level service. I mean, that's how I've accessed a lot of opportunities. I mean, I would do the board regardless of whether.
Right, obviously.
I mean, I love it. But,
Okay. Soren?
All right. I'm going to throw another complication to that scenario I presented to you earlier. So I don't have a terminal degree, so I'm not academically qualified. Instead, I am professionally qualified. And we are AACSB accredited. They have these different categories. One of the things in the professional category is you have to have your professional license, which I do. I've got more than one. There's no problem there. In addition to that, they say you do have to serve on a board of directors, preferably as the treasurer. So,
well, then there you go. Yeah, that's yeah.
So my question to you is.
So it's part of your FEPP, really.
Question for you guys is, I'm on 2 boards, and should I only show the one and not show the other because that needs a minimum qualification, or should I show both?
That's up to that between you and your chair.
Cindy?
Faculty members are a professional employee when you look at the category that you're in. The workload is developed so that you have some knowledge to prevent some form of burnout and to ensure that you are meeting your criteria for promotion and tenure. Your file, which you submit to show the whole person, shows everything that you do that is paid for, not paid for, and actually shows that you can be an organized individual and in 3 inches show that you accomplished the standards. Your workload, what is on that workload, is what the employer can hold you accountable to. Anything you do above and beyond is sugar on your performance.
Okay, so theoretically, if I put down I was going to be on 20 boards and I didn't accomplish that, I was only on 19 boards, I could be put on probation, double secret probation, or whatever it would be.
No, you could be evaluated as you didn't accomplish what was on your workload.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, Otto?
Okay. Now, I have been on University-wide Faculty Evaluation Committee for some time, and this is what we do.
when we look at the workload, we try to match the workload and the activity. Did you do what you said you are going to do? And is there a pattern? We also look at the self-review very minutely, because self-review is you're making a case why you should be tenured or promoted or what is it, and with reference to the criteria. Okay. And we also look at the previous review levels. And one of our concerns is that are you being railroaded? Are you being evaluated fairly? Is there somebody up there in your previous level who didn't like your face and trying to do you in? Okay. Are they following? So we look at that. Are you following the criterion? Are you following what is written in your standards? Those are the way we evaluate.
Dave?
Yeah, following up on that, what Denise said, I was of the impression that the activity could only address what was in the work, based upon what you just said. What? Well, I was of the opinion the activity report could only
an activity report.
And it's all did you accomplish the workload? No, you're saying there can be more.
Yeah, exactly.
It's saying in addition.
Oh yeah, right. No, but it's just saying. Yeah, you can add it. Most people almost. I've never seen one that was exactly what people always.
Does anyone online have something to say?
No, go ahead.
I'm good. I'm listening to it still. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Scott?
I just wanted to, and maybe Denise can answer this more, as she looked at the workloads of the faculty in CTC is, I guess the concern, as I've heard this discussion too, is that if you're moving units down from 20 to 15, 10, I've heard 5 as well, how that affects the university as a whole, of course. But it seems like the consequence might be, of course, that each unit's going to pull back from connections that they have and service that they do in other areas, whether it be the community, could be service to the profession, could be university-wide service. And as a result, we don't have the communication across the university and the connections that we do now. And that would be, which would maybe at times undermine some of the initiatives going forward and things that are happening. So I don't know if there's a good way to manage and monitor that, but that would be a concern regardless of the situation. Is a reduction of certainly from 20 to 5 in a unit. I would guess that I would see fewer people from that unit at a university-wide meeting. So
I would agree with you, and I don't know how much you were able to hear earlier, Scott, but at least for CTC, every college really is different in UAA. At least for CTC, the majority of our faculty moving from one unit to a different unit has necessitated us really looking more closely at things that were always called service, that according to the collective bargaining agreement of UNAC are clearly. And so while, yes, those numbers are going to change, it's not because people are going to be standing in front of your classrooms. And so I do not believe that in our case, what we're doing is in any way going to take anybody out of college, university, or community service. Rather, it's going to appropriately now classify things that are instructionally related as instruction when they previously would have appeared on workloads under the service area. That's what's happening.
Okay. Libby, you had your hand up.
Did I?
Well,
well, I didn't, but I will say something.
Okay. You did have your hand up.
Well, I'm just having two thoughts. One is going forward, just to keep in your mind always cafe on advice. Your information about all these things, just listening to people, realizing the confusion that exists. One is designed for new faculty, but you're welcome to come, as you are welcome to come to new faculty orientation for other purposes if you like. That's of course in August, and then we just had one in March. We always have one in the spring as well. So just know that if people don't really understand what's involved, they can come to those sessions. The other one is just maybe right. worried about whether it was more made to have administrators make decisions for faculty or faculty to have to make decisions for themselves. If you approval either way, and if this will require this. But this question of whether a college should get together and say, here's the goal, here's the transparent budget, here's what we need to come out with. Okay, what do you want to do? Whether faculty want that responsibility and that kind of work that goes involved, I don't know, but it's certainly, we're in a bad environment, right, fiscally, and decisions have to be made, and the faculty should be making them. Maybe they should be making them. It does involve a lot more time and energy, but I do also.
Well, I mean, I'd like to introduce different law service. We do have a distinctive understanding of what governance, shared governance is here. And I'm not using that either as a good or a bad distinctive, but it's distinctive from other places. And I think Denise has experienced something different than we have here. And whether you meant to or not with your speech was either the management makes it or faculty makes it. And it should not be either or. It really does need to be shared. And I know you probably didn't mean to say that, but it made me think we've got to talk about this, is how do we develop a better version of shared governance? Right now, our shared governance is actually more gotcha governance. Either the faculty develops something and the management says, no, gotcha, or the management develops something or administration develops something and the faculty goes, no, gotcha. So we've got to stop that. We do need to be much more shared and have it rise from the bottom up as and not the faculty and administration right from the get-go. Faculty and administration working together to come to these solutions. And that's what I mean by shared. And I'm trying. We're trying it out. It's a pilot study in arts and science. I'm an experimentalist. I have to try experiments. On the working hypothesis that sharing these responsibilities is a better way of doing it. And we have a thing called a working group. And they work on how to structure the college. Now they said they want to come back and study it further. Okay, fine. And we came up with, I think, a version of our FEPPs that are much more readable because it was shared between the administrators, associate deans, and a set of faculty. Not everybody's happy with it because they weren't one of the faculty or they weren't one of the administrators, but it was an experiment and shared, and I think we need to try and do more of that. And I would encourage that across the university.
And we're trying something very similar in the College of Health. We call them councils. Faculty nominate themselves, and then they're appointed to serve on a very short term. So we just did one for admissions. It's 3 one-hour meetings, and they're done. And I'm supposed to have the final product on Monday, and then they're going to move on to something else. But part of the task here might be to think about the number of committees that we have and the number of people that we have on all of these committees. And small reductions in either of those could have a pretty big impact on our workloads. Think about curriculum. We've talked about the curriculum process. It's unwieldy.
And I think it's either the workloads. I think it's probably embedded in CBA. I can't remember. Cindy, is that even though these are the categories of service, not everybody has to do every one of those categories. And if it's on the CBA, I know it's in our.
It is in the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Because that's kind of ridiculous to expect everybody to do everything.
And Article 13 clearly states, first sentence, your entire contract with the university is governed by your workload. That is everything you do. You're a professional. It isn't just teaching, research, and service. You have professional development. You have mentorship. You have all that is part of your job as a professional at the university. And it is all recognized on your workload, meeting with your dean and director to ensure that each one of you are fulfilling your commitment to your contract. No 2 faculty members are going to have identical workloads. And I have reviewed over 10,000 pieces of paper in the files in the last 3 years.
Jenny?
So just John, to get back to what you were saying about shared governance, which sounded really good, but it sounds like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I am completely open to acknowledge that this perception of mine might be related to my dean's communication style, but it sounds like the deans have been talking about reducing faculty workloads for some time, and I'm kind of wondering when you were going to bring us in on that conversation. Sorry,
The service.
The service component of the faculty workload, I apologize.
Well, I think that actually, in all honesty, the question about service was raised when Frank Jeffries made his report. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know, but it came to my awareness. I've only been here 6 years, but
3 years ago,
maybe 4.
Are you
It was
asking
really on.
when this conversation
But when this particular conversation,
I guess I'm asking
somebody brought it up at breakfast.
Yep, the infamous breakfast. And I want to say it was in January.
I'm wondering when you were planning to bring the faculty in on the conversation.
So pretty immediately,
Yeah.
John and Jeff reached out to Sharon.
Well, actually, no.
No, actually, no.
The
that's not
provost
true.
was the intermediary.
Well, wait a minute, we first contacted the UNAC and talked to Cindy and Abu Benito, and both of them said, go and talk with the faculty. They said, in terms of whether or not what we were thinking about doing was within the bounds of the CPA, but involved the faculty. We talked to the provost, who said involve the faculty, who did set up a meeting with, and actually in our plan, in all honesty, at the breakfast, we said who we need to talk to. We need to talk to the union and we need to talk to the faculty. And we did work through the provost to have a meeting with the executive committee. And then we showed up to this. This is another work, trying to talk with the faculty and listen, but also dispel myths that are, urban myths that are developing.
And I will point out 2 days before workloads are due to the deans, right? April 1st, I believe, is the date.
Technically,
Well,
second.
Right, so Monday. Yeah. So, no. But I'm just pointing out that, this is 3 days before workloads are due. At least at my college, I was informed by my director, and all of my colleagues in my department were informed 2-3 days ago that we had to rewrite our workloads. And I actually asked for an extension so that we could come to this meeting and hear what was being said, so that we could inform our decisions.
Back to my comment earlier, we met with Cindy 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago. So I think it is coming down to, again, a lot of department, how people have handled the communication.
It sounds like engineering wasn't informed.
Cindy?
Actually, again, the discussion that the line of communication and the way that the discussion has been evolving in engineering is very different from what you are putting forward, and that's not necessarily your fault.
Cindy?
And United Academics was contacted, and there were deans on the phone. And we looked through their draft and said, all you're doing is going to change the way the workload is. Are you prepared to recognize items that currently are in Anchorage listed as service under the work that they are, etc.? Because you do realize, and we told them on the phone, you do realize faculty are overly committed as it is. And yes, in Anchorage, we keep hearing different percentages of this, and this. In Fairbanks, it's a different percentage, and in Juneau. All of you are professional employees and accomplishing unbelievable amounts. So we recommended the deans, before it ever got implemented or any discussion, go through the faculty senate so faculty were involved to talk about these issues and address them. Unfortunately, I can tell you within 5 days, I was contacted by a department that said they were told it was implemented. And it is unfortunate that instead of truthful happenings going through the Faculty Senate, where Faculty Senate and governance shares and talks about all this, something became a directive.
Yep. Libby?
Two things. One is I've been struck for a long time by the fact that Sam Gingrich has often talked about how, compared to any other institution he's been, there are so few bodies that are cross-faculty administrators staff. Whereas many, many, many other places, many of the different things that they do, that's a given. That we are siloed the way that we are on this campus far more than we are in others, and that causes a lot of problems that don't need to happen, in my opinion. The other question is, this needs to be institutionalized, so this isn't an issue. It shouldn't be something where an issue comes up and then this has to be organized. I don't know if that's just a regular meeting between deans and directors in a small group and the faculty senate. But it could be just something where we don't wait for an issue, but every single month there is this open forum. Those kinds of things I think would help us.
Okay. Bada, and then after that, I'll ask if there's anyone online who has a comment, because we're getting up to our closing.
Now the thing is this is coming as a directive. It is clearly violating the spirit of faculty governance. I mean, let us understand that. You cannot have your cake and eat it also. Okay, you cannot say that this is a directive and then pretend to consult with us. Okay. And good luck. Faculty are knowledge workers, they have enough way of doing enough way of having so good. Okay, that's all I can say.
All right. Does anyone on the phone have a comment?
No, I'm good.
Oh, thanks, Sharon.
All right. Other people? I was specifically advised by faculty at Kodiak College that when you to repeat multiple times, ask if there are people on the phone who have comments, and then to actually pause for a little while because people have to like reach over and touch their mute button. So
yeah, they know how to use it.
Yeah. So I think that's a long enough time for anyone who wanted to unmute themselves to speak up. So any other closing comments?
One more question, if I could.
Yeah.
The committees that you guys had, were the faculty
Voted for.
Voted for, yes, I was wondering, were they selected or volunteered for it, or how?
Yes, by their colleagues. That's important.
I thought, yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. It's been very interesting. And again, if anyone has anything you want to send me by email, please feel free to do that. And I hope this is the start of a good dialogue with our administrators and deans and directors and whatnot. And while we're in the midst of workload agreement discussions this year, there's always may not be happy with how things are going. There's always next year.
Things can get worse, huh?
What?
Things can get worse.
I'd like to actually thank Sharon for inviting us to participate in this.
We don't get many opportunities
No,
like this.
so thank you.
We will try to have more of these. The new Faculty Senate President, Maria, I hope she will. Maybe I'll convene some as past president.
There you go. There's a job.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, and I'll have a good, if you're so inclined, a good holiday weekend.
A good April Fool's Day.
Happy April Fool's Day.
Okay, so I will make